Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Rust from the Beginning. This time we'll talk about control flow. Okay, so let's look at some code here. So we start off with salary, other income and tax. So we have an algorithm for trying to calculate out our take-home salary. Imagine this. Imagine that there is a rule in the taxation office that suddenly says if you make below a certain amount, then you don't have to pay taxes. We want to implement that somehow. The way to implement that is to make sure that we have more variables, of course, to represent the state. So for example, we want a way to say, okay, what's the actual value that we care about under which we don't pay any taxes? So that's $300, right? And we also need this if clause. The if clause is a way for us to conditionally say that we want to run this code if a certain condition is met. So here you can see how we add salary and other income together, compare that to we're saying that this should be larger than the no tax value. If that's the case, then I should pay taxes. This is us multiplying the taxes bit. So a way to verify how this function works is by printing out the take-home salary and try to verify what actually took place. And of course we need to make this variable mutable. So Rust wants everything to be the same type. So now we can see how the value is 230.7, which essentially means that no tax has been deducted, which means that we are making less than 300, which is perfectly fine according to our business rules. But what if the tax body suddenly decides that, hey, I actually want you to pay taxes already at 200. And now we've changed the condition, we need to recompile, we rerun, and we see that now tax has actually been deducted by 20%, because that was our taxation level. So that's how you could be using if. Here we have an account balance of $100. We are trying to deduct 101.50, and our business coder is telling us if it's actually possible. If this amount is less than what you have on your account, I will allow it. If not, then I will add this else construct. So I'm going to say, sorry buddy, you can't withdraw this much money. So the else can be hooked up or connected to the if. So else can't live by itself, but it needs to live if there is an if. And the idea is if the if evaluates false, then the else is being run instead. So let's try to compile that. And now we are seeing that it says can't withdraw 101.5, which was the expected answer. Now, if we suddenly got a payday, let's say that we actually added $20 to our account, then this should work, right? So at this point, it is telling us that, yes, I am typing this line here on line 6, deducted $101.5. So yeah, if and else are great to use together, especially if you have a condition where you want to say, look, if here failed, for that reason, something should happen. Okay, so you've seen if so far, you've seen else. What about else if? Well, else if is a construct that you use in between. So you use that in between if and else. Here you can see we have a bunch of else ifs between if and else. And what else if, it has actually some similarities to if. You can see that if has a expression. So does else if, but there's no expression on else. So they are very similar, but else if can't exist unless there's an if first. What we're trying to do in this specific case is try to evaluate what a card number should be called. So some card numbers have names, like Jack, Queen, King, and Ace. All the other ones are just called by their numbers. What we can do at this point is to try to compile and run this. And we can see that the value is to Jack. And we know that anything below Jack is not going to have a specific name, but just going to be the number, which is to be expected. Let's try one more. Let's make sure that it's actually hitting all the different clauses. Right, so this time it went by Ace and called it Ace because it was a 1. So, and this previous line here where it says card number is 8, this is where it hits the else. So you can see that our logical construct is working well, but just a word of reminder here, if you have an else if, there needs to exist an if. Else if and if are very similar, they both have expression. Else if will start to be evaluated as soon as if is failing or is returning a false. One last thing I wanted to show you on the topic of if is using if as an expression. Now so far I showed you if using multi-line. So there was if, there was curly braces, and then there were expressions that would run if things were true and so on. look here at line 4 and you see how if and else is actually on the same line. And this is great for visibility, especially if you have very small conditions. So how should I read this? Well, first off, what we're doing is to calculate our take-home salary, right? And what we're also doing is define an if this condition is true, then what we're saying here is that this, what goes on here is actually going to be assigned to this variable. So anything that happens within the curly braces is what is going to be assigned. And with the else, we just put a value here in the salary variable in this case. This is a very nice short form, especially if your conditions are very short, because remember with coding, readability is what we aim for, right? So for shorter conditions like this, I really recommend this approach. But for longer conditions, especially with the cards and deducting tax and so on, it makes sense to use the normal version of if and else. As usual, I would really appreciate any comments, likes, or subscription, so I know that you're interested in this type of material. I hope to see you in another video.